Peace. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. Of course, today we're going to talk about a new revelation coming from the grandson of the shooter of Ralph Yarl. We'll be talking about Clinton Ludwig, who is the grandson of Andrew Lester, and how he admits that his grandfather is a racist. We'll talk about the implications on that. Also, we're going to have a very special guest, Dr. Robert Brown, who's going to talk to us about Black male adultification, how he wrote a book from Joker to Kane. We'll have that discussion. And later we'll talk about the downfall of Jonathan Majors and how fast everything has happened over the career of this Black phenom here. We'll have that conversation and a whole lot more. Stay with us. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, let's jump right into it. Happy Friday, first and foremost. But let's talk about what's going on with this case of Ralph Yarl. The case continues to unfold in new development. And the latest development is an interview that was done by his grandson, by the grandson of the shooter, grandson of Andrew Lester. And we're going to be talking about Clinton Ludwig, who did an interview on CNN where he discussed what happened, how he expressed his empathy and to the Yarl family and to little brother Ralph, and how he admitted, folks, that his grandfather has quote unquote racist tendencies. Wow. We're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to be joined in a few moments by Culture Crew member Corinna Denise to give her take on the situation. And of course, I want to hear from you, Culture Crew. I want to let you make sure you post your comments in the on our YouTube chat, on our Facebook chat, and let's have a conversation about this. If you think that this is going to have any implication on how the prosecutors may move forward on this case, does this have any implication on how the defense attorneys may move forward? We want to hear from you. Make sure you post your comments and we'll get to them very quickly. All right, let me share with you what Mr. Ludwig had shared about his grandfather and his quote unquote racist tendencies. Take a look at this, folks. This is during an interview that he had on CNN's Don Lemon, and Lester's grandson, Clint Ludwig, he called the shooting a quote-unquote horrible tragedy that should never have happened, which prompted Don Lemon to ask Ludwig why he's speaking out against his own relative. According to him, he said, "It's the right thing to do. In this country, it happens over and over again where people get away with killing unarmed, innocent Black people. And I would have had the same energy for any other case like I've had over and over again in this country. I believe he holds racist tendencies and beliefs." He said in response to Lemons asking him, does he believe his grandfather, Andrew Lester, is a racist? He said, quote, "He's just a stock American Christian male. It's an older, that's just how they are. It's the conspiracies and weird, random racist things they say, and it doesn't make sense, but they are just scared." They're just scared. Okay, let's see how this situation plays out. Let me bring in Culture Crew member Corinna Denise, who is an educator. She's also a college admissions advisor. And I want to get her take on this as we talk about this whole thing and how it may play a big part in the case against Andrew Lester. Corinna, good afternoon. Happy Friday. How are you feeling?
Peace, Farajii. Happy Friday. Feeling
peace,
okay.
Peace. Let's talk about Andrew Lester. More importantly, his grandson, Clint Ludwig, making this, just dropping this bombshell. Now, this is a case that the prosecutors said they will see if race played a motive in the shooting of little brother Ralph Yarl, but it still hasn't been made clear if they're going to move forward in prosecuting it as a hate crime. Now, with this coming out, And I know you're not a lawyer, Corinna, but do you think that this is going to help or hurt the case against Andrew Lester?
I feel like that's a big if question,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How much impact will it have? I mean, it might have. I'm so ambivalent about it. I feel like maybe it'll be taken into consideration, but I honestly don't think it'll have a very big impact. But I hope I'm wrong about that, and maybe we'll be surprised. But we've seen over and over again in these types of cases that it just doesn't go in our favor as quickly as Mr. Lester was charged. He was released on bond. It didn't seem like his bond was very high, for him to be able to get out so quickly. I remember reading somewhere that I think he had fled the area initially after he was taken into the police station or whatnot. So there's always something, some little odds and ends there. So I hope it has an impact. I mean, it says a lot. And I think his grandson speaks to that younger generation who are up and coming, and they're just not as tolerable of all these other things, and they're kind of pushing back on it. But yeah, I strongly doubt that if Ralph Yarl was a white male, 16-year-old, that he would have even held out his gun. There may have been like communication or exchange there, but that didn't happen. But yeah, Farajii, I mean, I hope it would play a part, but I don't think it's going to be significant. But I do hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too. Let's talk to the crew. Let's get their take on this as we talk about this latest development in the case against Andrew Lester, and as we continue to talk about what happened to little brother Ralph Yarl. Janelle, thank you so much for checking in and kicking us off this afternoon. You say, quote, an 84-year-old white man in Missouri would definitely have been brought up racist. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of work folks still have to do today. Acknowledging it is most of the battle. Yeah, the question becomes whether he acknowledged it himself or whether somebody else acknowledged it. And I'm right there with you, Janelle, that it's huge if a white person who has grown up around racism and has embraced that as a child and maybe as a younger adult, and then over time has decided, you know what, this is not who I am. I do know this doesn't, fit into my values. Therefore, I'm not going to continue to perpetuate these beliefs. That's one thing. But you're talking about an 84-year-old man who couldn't even, let's keep this in perspective, Janelle and Corinna, he couldn't even admit to the fact that he shot the boy.
Right. He pled not guilty, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Now, that might be a legal move just to say, hey, that might be a legal move. But I remember reading, and this report could be wrong, but I remember reading that when the police showed up on the scene, he's denied even shooting him there. So it's like, well, okay, so the gun just magically appeared out of nowhere, and this little brother shot himself in the face. Okay. Yeah. So it's we are at that place. But I do agree with you on this point, Corinna, where you said that there's a generation of younger white people in this country who are sort of kind of like pushing back. And I know that for Clint Ludwig, if you listen to the interview he did, it was a little bit of some hesitation. Like he did not want to denounce his own grandfather. And it has to be a hard thing to do. But when a circumstance like this happens, a tragedy like this happens, it's hard to just say, well, he didn't do it.
And I would imagine he's also going to get some backlash. So I would
think
from
the family or from
the family, friends, like, why would you do this to your grandfather? So it takes someone, who has some integrity to stand in it when it's right, even if you're standing alone. So I think it was brave of him to come on and even have that interview with Don Lemon on CNN and to say those things about his grandfather. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but like we're at a turning point where it's happening so much that it's like, okay, maybe that was the impetus for him to speak up. And it's just an unfortunate situation that now it's actually one of his family members who he has to come on and speak of this matter. But it's necessary. We need to have more people like the grandson show up in that way to push back.
Right. That's very true. Very true. Tiana, you checked in. You said race was definitely a motive. Talking about Andrew Lester, he needs to be held without bond. That was attempted murder. I don't know why they didn't charge him attempted murder though, Corinna.
I'm not surprised, Farajii, to be honest. I feel like they'll always seek out maybe like the least charge per se, like the lowest charge that they can go. But I think it definitely turned into an attempted murder at the very least when he shot Ralph the second time. You
Right.
know, if you're going for a motive of, let's say we're under the pretense of self-defense, right? So you shoot once, but it's like to, I guess, put down the person, right? How many times do you have to keep shooting? And this is what we keep seeing, even from police officers. It's like they just shoot round after round after round. Like someone's riddled with bullets. I can't move, and you're still shooting at me. So yeah, I think attempted murder would have been justified, but I certainly wasn't expecting that charge. I have to be honest. I'm not surprised that he was already out on bond. I mean, it took all of social media and all the pushing and all the pressuring, right? Just for him to get the arrest, but he's already out. You know, if this was reversed, we know we wouldn't have seen that happen. And then add to that, you know, to Jane L's point, you know, an 84-year-old white man, given where he lives, definitely grew up with those racist beliefs and tendencies. But then add to that, modern day Fox 4 News, who's just stirring up the pot, and they're really creating a sense of fear, you know, which Roland talks about all the time, white fear, in this country.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that just boil over now, more and more and more. It's like every day you turn on the news, there's a new incident with someone shooting someone in the name of self-defense. And they're
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting that Clint, the grandson, mentioned that in the interview. He said that his grandfather watches Fox News all the time. He obsesses over the information and the content from Fox News. So here's what I'm thinking that the defense may do if it goes to a trial. The defense may try to put on the fact that he's 84 years old. He's taking in Fox News, and he was, quote unquote, in a moment of fear and some level of insanity because he has been exposed to some racist, you know, ideology. I feel like they're going to probably try to land this on Fox News. They might try to land this that he was temporarily out of his own mind. Like he's not, that he wasn't competent to this whole situation. So, you know, it's important that, you know, that people have some sense of leniency and compassion. And I think they're going to try to play on that. I think they're going to try to play on it.
They're always going to try and play off the emotions of
right.
the people in the audience and like, oh, he's an older man. And, you know, maybe, I don't know if he lives alone and he was scared, blah, 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 blah. Like, I've kind of already mentally prepared myself for what's about to come out of that. So, and it's unfortunate, right? That it always seems to be that way. And I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer, but we've just seen case after case after case. So, and again, Farajii, to your point, like, why wasn't he given the attempted murder charge? So the fact that he's already out on bond, you know, the charges were like, I think it was like what, battery and assault or something of that nature. I might be have it wrong, but something to that extent. They weren't, you know, the justified charges. And I honestly don't think, you know, the charges brought against Mr. Lester were under the pretense of, well, what can we actually charge him for that might actually get like a conviction?
Yeah.
You know, in that sense, it's kind of just like the privilege per se. Like, let's just try and get it down as much as we can. So yeah, it's really unfortunate, but yeah, I think you make a good point. They might just leverage.
They might know it. Hey, they might take it from the. My man Keenan checked in and said, "Look, they might take it from the devil made me do it to Fox News made me do it."
Yeah.
I mean,
and that temporary insanity too might come up.
I wouldn't doubt it. I don't put nothing past anybody nowadays, so I would not doubt it. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more of your thoughts around this as we talk about Clint Ludwig, the grandson of Andrew Lester, the shooter of little brother Ralph Yarl, and sharing that he admits that his father has racist tendencies and taking in all this information. What's your take on that? Join us in a conversation and stay tuned. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the latest development in the case of Andrew Lester, the 84-year-old white man who shot 16-year-old little brother Ralph Yarl for simply knocking on his door. It was a mistake of brother Ralph going to the wrong door to pick up his sibling, and it led to a tragedy. And thank God it wasn't a fatal tragedy, but it was a tragedy where 16-year-old Ralph Yarl was shot in the head and the arm by the 84-year-old. Now, here's the situation. His grandson came out and did an interview on CNN and basically admitted that his grandfather has what he calls racist tendencies and beliefs. Take a look. This is the grandson, obviously, on the one side, and then Andrew Lester on the other. But he admitted that he has been consumed, that he does have this very, very tainted, narrow view of the world, and essentially that he's a racist. But the question becomes, how much of this will be a part of the prosecution against Mr. Lester? Will this hold up? Will this interview help or harm the case against Andrew Lester? We will have to see. Now, I've been joined by my Culture Crew member, Corinna Denise, who is an educator and advisor, college advisor. And folks, of course, I want to hear from you as you're posting your thoughts on YouTube and Facebook as we have this conversation. All right, let me see something here. I want to share something that Brother Roland put in his book, because Corinna, you talked about it, his book, his latest bestseller, White Fear. Let's put this at the bottom here, Keenan, around what Brother Roland had said about white fear in his book and why it's important for us to even have a conversation like this. He says, why is it so important to understand?
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let's try this again. We were talking about the situation, the latest development in the case of Andrew Lester. Clint Ludwig said his grandson said that his grandfather has racist tendencies, and now we're looking at the implication of the case. Now, I want to share something that Brother Roland said in his book, White Fear. Let's post that if we can, Keenan. This is coming from Brother Roland's bestseller, White Fear, the book. Make sure y'all pick it up if you haven't had a chance. But he said, why is it so important to understand white fear without proper understanding of the of this level of insanity, the pulsating insanity, and the history behind it? Folks, there is a pulsating insanity in this country. He said, we will continue to be blindsided every time white fear inevitably rears its head. This is from our founder, Brother Roland Martin, in his book. So we're looking at a situation, folks, where it comes up, but if we don't address it, it's going to always be a problem. Let me bring back Corinna very quickly. Corinna, what's your take on that? I mean, is that a great synopsis of what we're looking at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We need to understand it so that we can identify it, because it continues to rear its ugly head. I mean, it's just fair. You know what this makes me think about, Farajii? I don't know if you remember this movie called The Village. I think it came out maybe almost 20 years ago, M. Night Shyamalan. And I remember it was like this Amish style community, and they were kind of still living without electricity and all these things. And they had all these like monsters that the people feared. And like a young man gets sick in the community and his girlfriend is going to find the medicine. And at the end of the movie, you find out that they're living this way. It's by choice, but the people, the community, they're controlling them by fear. They had no idea that there was like hope on the other side. Like, you don't have to live without electricity. Like, you know, it's all good. But they were controlling them with fear. And that's what's happening today. They are so fearful. And the thing that I find to be so ironic is it's like, especially when it comes to Black folks in this country, knowing our history here, all over the world. You know, we built the country, we've served the country, we saved the country each and every time, right? It's like they fear us so much, but it's like at the same time, they can't even live without us. It's the most, I feel like things would just fall apart if we really did like a great migration back to Africa or somewhere else per se, right? But they fear us so much. So this 84-year-old man that I think they're going to paint and make him look like he's vulnerable and he was scared and, you know, he lives alone and he just needed to protect himself. You know, we're going to see that. I definitely think that's going to play out in the courtroom, how they're going to describe him to justify this murder.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not murder. Thankfully, Ralph Yarl is alive.
Shoot, I got you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I think Roland summed it up excellently. Like, that is the justification of white fear. And it's like, this is how they move, because it's like, he sees this young man on his porch and it's like, he didn't see a human being or even much less a kid. You know, there wasn't even an exchange of words to say like, who is it? I think you have the wrong address or the wrong house. He literally just shot him and then you shoot him again. So, you know, but they're going to definitely paint a pretty picture. I'm sure his defense attorneys, like I said, I just don't see it going in our favor because he's already out on bail. The charges aren't what I think they should be, what many of us think they should be. And I don't think the charges rendered were under the pretense of this is what we could actually get a conviction of. I think it's just a matter of privilege here to be.
I agree. Young Sikh, you checked in, bro. You said to me, the rarity is not that someone has a granddad that is racist. It's that a grandson has this level of honesty, perspective, and can separate his identity to that of a patriarch enough to speak to it. I'm glad. I agree with you there, Young Sikh, that at the end of the day, this young man decided, you know what, I'm going to say something at the to go against. And look, let me just say, look, folks, we are living in that time. Remember, I've had conversations with y'all about, if you got certain type of individuals in your families that are a pariah to the community, that we all going to have to find that inner strength to be like, you know what? I got to do something. I got to speak out. I can't just continue to protect you and preserve you and to try to hold you back from any consequences. At this point, you are a problem. And I think that's the place that we need to go. This country is never going to get better. Our cities, our communities, us as a people, as human beings, we're never going to get better if we allow madness to continue, or if we don't shun those individuals, even though they may be close to us, their family members and all of that stuff. But if you know that they are a real problem, then you got to call a spade a spade.
Exactly.
You got to call a spade a spade. And I think that's the problem with that's part of the growth and maturity that we are lacking right now in the culture, that we're not saying enough and speaking out. And you mentioned this earlier, Corinne, as we close out. You mentioned that there needs to be more young white people. And I believe there are a lot of young white people in this country who are saying, you know what? I'm not with the racism. I'm not with this talk. When you saw in the summer of 2020, with all of those demonstrations and marches, those weren't just black folks out in the street. Those were young white people in the street.
That's right.
So that's the situation. Pauline, real quick, you said, I don't care how old this man is. Look how old Bill Cosby is. Facts. If he was that scared, why did he even answer the door? I'm just saying. Oh, she said, answer the door. BS. Facts. Absolutely. So we're going to have to see, Corinna, how this whole situation plays out. And more importantly, does this interview, this kind of like personal insight from a grandson, how much will it weigh on the prosecution's case, and how much will it weigh on the defense?
And to Pauline's point, he wasn't scared because he already had that gun in his hand. That's why
he already got the gun in his hand. He already got the gun in his hand. All right, folks, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about this a little bit from a different angle. I want to have a conversation with one black man, Dr. Robert Brown, who's going to give us some insight about this idea of adultification and how black men, young brothers like a Ralph Yarl, has been adultified in society. And what does that mean? How does that affect our relationship and our view of black men and young black women? Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. As we talk about the story of little brother Ralph Yarl, we want to continue to have a robust conversation looking at all the dynamics that played into that great tragedy. And so my next guest can give us some more insight, as he has been doing the great work of Black male achievement, working with young people, the next generation. He's been working in the community, and he has been doing his work among the fraternities, one of the great fraternities in our community. Dr. Robert Brown, who is joining us, could talk a little bit about what we're seeing right now as it relates to the culture around how we're viewing Black youth, particularly Black males, and the adultification of Black males. Now, for some of you, this might be a new term. So let me just share this with you as we have this conversation. When we're talking about adultification, we're referring to the racial bias in which people perceive Black children as older and less innocent than white children. Y'all ready for that? Take a look at this. This is coming out of ABC News. This is showing us, based on the latest set of research that is shown as we talk about Ralph Yarl, has shown that people often perceive young Black males as bigger and more physically threatening than young white males of the same size. Studies also found that Black children are more likely to be seen as adult-like, less in need of protection, and perceived as angry when they're not. This can have a devastating consequences, leading to discrimination and even violence against Black children. According to researchers, several researchers refer to the bias as dehumanizing for Black people. All right, I want to, and there's the story there, folks, talking about this level of adultification. And as my brother Robert Brown is doing the work that he is doing, I thought to myself, we need to have some discussion about this, because this is something that I think it speaks to volumes about where we are in this country. If we can't look at the fact, have a very real conversation about where we are, more importantly about how we're looking at the next generation, how we're going to talk about progress, how can we talk about making any type of gain if this is the case. All right, let me bring my brother in, Brother Robert Brown, and of course we're still joined by my sister Corinna Denise, one of our culture crew members. And Brother Robert is a writer, men's development coach, college professor in Southern California. And again, he has over 25 years of experience in education, but he's also he's also the former West Coast Regional Director and current Executive Board member of Groove Phi Groove Social Fellowship Incorporated. And so we're so happy to have him joining us for this conversation this afternoon. Brother Robert, thank you so much for your time. How are you, dear brother?
Hey, I am excellent. I appreciate being on your show, Farajii. This is an awesome show, and it's a very, very much needed topic.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to also be having my sister Corinna joining us in a few moments. But Brother Robert, I want us to start off with talking to you about this level of adultification that we're seeing right now. Because you work with young people you work with really all ages. You work with teenage boys, you work with young men coming out of college and into their adult years. Right. So you're seeing the full gambit of this. But when we look at a case in a story like Ralph Yarl, where he's 16, he's a certain size, but he's not doing anything. He's not really a threat, right? But to some, and then we said that as Black men, as the Black community, it's like, oh, he's a normal 16-year-old. We use that term, normal. But to somebody else, he's not normal. He's a grown man. Through the eyes of another person, he's a threat. So talk to us about what we're seeing right now. You know, basically, how did we get into a place that we can start to adultify a young boy like this?
Whew. It's a very deep topic. How did we get here really stems from centuries and centuries of stereotyping Black folks, men and women, as really dehumanizing ways. It's not a current trend. This is something that goes way back. You got to think about how these slave owners treated enslaved Africans, and you have to dehumanize them in order to put them in those terrible conditions in the first place. And the stereotypes that persist about size, hypersexuality, all of these things were justifying some of these horrific behaviors from white folks. This continues into our society today. So even now in 2023, those issues are still here. They just play themselves out in very different ways that are specific to our current culture. So we have somebody like Ralph Yarl who goes to this man's house by mistake, and this man is still steeped in these adultification ideas. Plays itself out in seeing this person as a threat, seeing him bigger than he is. This guy is going to hurt me. Shoot first, ask questions later. It's a very
and the crazy part about it, Dr. Robert, is that this is not the first time that we're seeing these type of situations and incidents come up. I'm reflecting on Trayvon Martin. That's what George Zimmerman felt like. That Trayvon Martin, this young teenage boy, was a quote unquote a threat to the whole neighborhood. So he shouldn't have been where he was. I'm thinking about Mike Brown, how the police officer who shot and killed Mike Brown thought he was a threat because he was a little bit bigger than your quote unquote normal size. But these are still these are teenage boys. They're not even beyond the age of 19. We can go back to Tamir Rice, who was shot and killed in the park by police because he brandished a fake gun, but how it took less than 3 seconds for the police to determine he was a threat. I mean, we can go down the line. So this level of adultification that you're speaking of, I mean, this thing goes so deeply rooted. How come we don't, as Black folks, do we see white teens in the same manner?
You know what? The studies show that it's not that case. It really is seeing Black folks older than they are, bigger than they are. And you know what? When you mentioned like Tamir Rice or Trayvon Martin, it's not even that they were a little bit bigger in size. Even people who are not a little bit bigger in size, we have studies that show that officers, lay folks, people who are white college women, there was a study done with white college women perceiving Black males as older than they are by about 4.5 years, not even of different height or different weight. Just because of the color of their skin, they are automatically, on average, perceiving these folks as 4.5 years older than they really are. So it has nothing to do with size. It has nothing to do with weight. It really is that perception. It really is that internalized bias of, and I want to say it is not only Black boys. We have to take care of our Black girls as well, because
great point.
Adultification happens so much with our Black girls. We are hypersexualizing our Black girls. We are looking at them as older and more mature than they really are, and we are taking away their innocence far too often.
Let me just throw this out there before we take our next pause, Doc. Keenan, let's jump down to quote 3, because I think what Dr. Brown is saying is absolutely true. Here's a study, folks, from UCLA study. It says it found that Black children were considered significantly less innocent than children in every age group starting at age 10, folks. Take a listen, crew. I want y'all to listen to me. Age 10. As a result, Black children are 18 times more likely than white children to be criminally sentenced as adults rather than children. Now, this is according to a study in the Personality and Social Psychology Journal. It also states that Black children are also much more likely to be suspended from school and receive harsher punishment for the same infractions than white children, according to research published by the American Psychological Association, under the assumptions backed by adultification. Black youth are also more likely to face police violence if accused of a crime, according to the UCLA study as well. So to your point, Dr. Brown, this is a very, very real problem, to the point where our Black boys and our Black girls are seen as adults. The part that got to me, and then we want to take a quick pause, Black children are 18 times more likely than white children to be criminally sentenced as adults rather than children. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so we're looking at a culture that we have to uproot. But look at how, like you said, this is years upon years of like conditioning and racism and bias that has been ingrained in us. And then you got to deal with, once we raise our children, I have a boy, I have a son and a daughter. So now I have to raise my children in a certain way so that way they won't be seen as a threat, quote unquote. But even if we raise our children to be submissive, to follow orders, to not create any disturbance or problems once they go into white spaces, it does not matter, Doc. Because guess what? In the mind of a white person who has been conditioned to think this way, they already as a threat, as soon as they walk into the room, before they even open up their mouths, and before people can see the brilliance and excellence and the beauty of these children. It's absolutely insane. I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more with Dr. Robert Dalen Brown. I want to hear from you, crew. What's your thoughts on this? They're talking about Black male adultification. And, of course, we got my sister, Corinna Denise. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
A real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about Black male adultification as we talk about how the world sees Black children, Black men and Black women, which may have played a huge role in the shooting of little brother Ralph Yarl. I'm just checking in, and that's our little brother right there, Ralph Yarl, who is in recovery. And let's continue to send prayers to him and his family as he is working through this tragedy. But he is in recovery, getting access or kind of recovering, getting control of his faculties from the great, great tragedy that happened last week. But we've been having this conversation with Dr. Robert Dalen Brown. who's been giving us some insight as to what we're seeing, and more importantly, how we're processing this within the culture. I want to bring my sister Corinna Denise back into the discussion. As a woman who works in the space, she's been an educator, Dr. Brown. She's worked in the schools, and now she's working with college students. Corinna, how do we have these conversations with Black men? And of course, as Dr. Brown said, and of course, based upon the research, with Black women, that kind of prepares them for how the world sees them. You know what I mean? I remember, just very quickly, I remember when growing up, I would often hear Black parents say this to Black boys and Black girls. If y'all grew up in the 80s and 90s, y'all know, y'all probably heard this. The world don't see you the way I see you. And I remember hearing those words and having my, listen to my friends' parents saying those words to me. And I was thinking to myself, what does that mean? You know what I mean? As a child, you're like, what are you talking about? I'm a child. What do you mean the world don't see me as a woman? Now it resonates. Mm-hmm. And that was back in the 80s and 90s. We're talking about 2022, 2023. So how do we get this message to Black children, Black youth, that the world don't see them the way we see them?
I think it starts with that very gentle, truthful conversation, right? Like I said a couple weeks ago here on The Culture, I think kids can handle anything as long as we tell them the truth. And unfortunately, it is a conversation that we have to have, that the world doesn't see you as I do, and that can be difficult. And something that really stuck out to me as Dr. Brown was speaking, I know in a lot of these situations, especially with the adultification, we see it with, these police cases and how police encounter youth or whatnot and how they're perceived to look like adult. But as an educator, I've seen that in that school space, right? With high school students, particularly interacting with their white teachers, and those, casual day-to-day interactions, whether it's, discipline in the classroom with the student, right? Or with a lesson, they'll be a little bit more gentler, a little bit more gracious when it comes to maybe a white student as opposed to like the Black students, but even in the teachers' interactions, like how they might describe a student or speak and the manner in which they talk about them, you can already see that they have this perceived view. Well, she's too fast, she's grown, because again, to the point that we're talking about, that Black adultification. So I've even seen it in those spaces. So, I'd also like to ask Dr. Brown, how do we navigate that in the educational space? Because it's one thing when, we're outside, but, there are children who are subjected to this, on a daily basis, like one wrong move. And it's like the teacher is just the way that they might discipline that student or go about speaking to them is sometimes significantly different than if it's a white child. And I have to be honest, I have seen that from like white colleagues and in those spaces that I've been in as an educator.
That's a great question, Doc.
Well, a lot of times we talk to our children and we try and have these conversations with our children so that we can prepare them to be safe, happy, successful. But at the end of the day, when it all comes down to it, those students are children and they are not responsible for that classroom. It really boils down to the training that is given to those people in power. And in a classroom, in that enclosed space, when the rubber meets the road, it's the teacher in that classroom with the students. And it's that teacher that needs to be well trained. It's that teacher that needs to be taught what institutional and systemic racism looks like so that they can be aware themselves of what they are doing in that classroom. We can do all the talking we want with our students, and that's true. We should be talking with our children. But if no one is talking with those teachers, if no one is talking with the people who are in power, then those people in power are going to continue to perpetuate a lot of these dangerous, pervasive stereotypes.
So Dr. Brown, and I'm glad Corinna brought this point up. Will teachers and educators, will they have to go through a much more, I would say, rigorous or more comprehensive training to check their personal biases, considering that our children, Black boys and Black girls, spend a majority amount of time per day in the classrooms? Does that mean that we need to have some more serious training around that? Because here's what I'm thinking when you said that. There are two elements or two factors to consider about the teachers. Most of the teachers in this country are women. And we're seeing a number of teachers that are white women in this country in the classroom teaching Black boys and Black girls.
Right.
So since we know that this adultification comes from a spatial bias, racial bias, then that adultification may have to be checked with them first. Outside of the home themselves, it's the teacher. How does the student feel about himself or herself, the Black boy, the Black girl feel about himself or herself, if the teacher makes them feel like an adult, right? Don't show them as much compassion, or they don't believe them when they say a situation has come up. It's that teacher. So does the teacher needs to go through some extra stuff? And I'm not trying to put extra stuff on teachers because I love teachers. Of course, I'm not trying to do that, but I just know that the power of the teacher's view is just as powerful as the police officer's view.
Yeah.
You know what? The short answer to the question is yes. The short answer to the question is yes, and let me tell you why. And the reason is, in a teacher training program, I could have all kinds of classes and coursework and have them go through all kinds of topics, but nothing is more important than that relationship between two people. We can talk about lesson planning and assessment all day, but I would much rather have one less conversation about assessment so I can have room for one more conversation about this right here. Okay. Now, that being said, you're right. 70% of all K-12 teachers are women. Of those 70%, the majority are white women. And you have, 2% of the teaching population are Black men? 2%?
Right.
There's a representation issue here. There's a training issue here. There is a power dynamic issue here. And it is not only in education. We see this with the justice system. We see this with healthcare system. There was a study that was published right before the pandemic in 2019 that was looking at adultification of Black patients receiving anesthesia. Black children are less likely to have their parents present in the room when inhalation induction was taking place.
Wow.
They were. This study was published in 2019. It's not that long ago, and it's not. We're talking in medical field where we are hoping that people are treated well with care. But these things play themselves out in all aspects of our culture, not just education, medical field, the justice system, entertainment industry. We see
Absolutely.
We see it all over the place. It's very, very pervasive.
Absolutely. Look, I got to take a quick pause. We're going to continue this conversation as on the other side, because as much as we're talking about these outside sources, let's talk about, are we causing ourselves to be adultified? Because guess what, folks? Oh, well, I'm about to touch on. Are we stepping on somebody's toes? Hey, boy, we're gonna put this bill in your name. We already put adult responsibilities on our children at a very early age. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it 1,000, Dr. Brown.
Hey,
all the time.
We're calling these boys little man.
Little man.
We are exactly. We are asking these. Some of us adults are not healed ourselves, and we are putting a lot of responsibility on kids to do. There's an entire other topic called parentification.
You see, we got to take a pause, man. Hey, look, brother, I can't do this with you right now. I got to take a pause. Coretta, see, this is what happens, Coretta, when you come on the show. All right, we're gonna take a quick pause. Folks, let's continue the conversation. Black male adultification and so much more. Stay with us. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been having a very, very good conversation talking about black male adultification. This is the bias that is often used to taint the view of how we see black men and black boys and black girls, where we try to put them in a space of being adults when they're still children. A bias that has caused great destruction and dehumanization of our children in the community. I've been having this conversation with Dr. Robert Dalen Brown, who is an educator. He's an author, and he's been doing some work around this. He actually has a book called Joker to King. And this is a book where he looks at black male development, talking about how do we groom the next generation from seeing themselves from a place of powerlessness to being in a place where we can call them king. I'm also joined by educator and advisor Corinna Denise, an online culture crew member, and of course by you. I want to bring them both back into the conversation here, because Doc and Corinna, the big thing is that I think the adultification starts at home. I think the adultification starts at home. I think that we only give black children like 5 or 6 years to be children, man, and then after that, it's like, all right, well, you're on your own. By the time they're 10, they get adult responsibilities. We're putting so much on them. I have to, and this is something, and I think any one of us, those who are conscious or not conscious, and I'm using this word saying that those who know better and those who don't, but those of us who are conscious, like, I don't know about y'all, but I have to intentionally, consciously remind myself that my son, who is 9 years old, about to turn 10 in June, is a little boy. I'm gonna admit to that. You know what I'm saying? That I have to be like, you know what? He is 9, so he gonna do some. He gonna be silly. He gonna be goofy. He gonna knock stuff over. I gotta give him space to be a child, right? And I think that is something that a lot of us, and crew, y'all, if y'all honest with yourself, it's a hard thing to do in the Black community, because it feels like our childhood has been ripped, not by the white man or some system. It's been ripped sometimes by our own family members, Doc. Like, we couldn't grow up. We couldn't make no mistake. We couldn't be a child. And I tell my son all the time, son, don't grow up so fast. Enjoy your childhood. So are we putting ourselves in a position to be adultified by the world outside of our home? Doc,
You know what? I think both are happening simultaneously.
All right.
There still exists in white America that racial bias that still exists. At the same time, sometimes we are internalizing some of those same stereotypes, but we're also not healed ourselves. You know, we do things, we put undue responsibility on our kids because we need help. You know, we put undue responsibility on our kids because we think they're ready for it. The world is going to do this to you. The world is going to do that to you. So I'm going to get you prepared. And then all of a sudden we stop talking to them as kids and we start talking to them as these young adults. Children are not little adults. We need to we need to remember that children are not little adults. Children are children. Adults are adults, and they are very, very different. They have different developmental needs, different vocabularies, and we need to talk appropriately to our children. You know, I'm going to still give my kids chores. They're age-appropriate chores. They're still going to have kid things to do because they are kids. And we need to, you know what, you're right, Farajii, we need to remember this in our own homes. We need to be conscious of it. And it does take some intentionality on our parts, right?
And Dr. Brown, I just want to piggyback off what you said. It really made me think about, so a couple of years ago, usually like my 11th grade students, as I'm preparing them for college and things like that, I'd always set all of them up with like some sort of summer internship. And I remember one of my students specifically saying to me, like, Miss, I appreciate everything that you're doing, but she was like, I can't work. My mom, I work for her. Like, basically her responsibility, her summer's not for her to do any internship or any college prep. She has to watch all of her siblings, her brothers and sisters, run the errands. And, you know, I've seen this so much, and I know parents also need assistance, but you also see where the kids are really like weighed down with all that adult responsibility. And it does come out in their interactions with you as the educator or the counselor that they see on a daily basis. So like, to kind of circle back to that point, yeah, I do think it starts in the home too, you know, because sometimes children aren't always given that, you know, the luxury of just being a child and doing childlike things. And they do have to take on these responsibilities early enough. Like I know someone else, another student of mine, who she could not wait to go to college. She was definitely leaving the state. She wanted to get away. She was like, I'm done trying to raise my siblings, you know, it's me time now. Like, I want to get my education. But all that to say, yeah, I do see where it has affected students that I've worked with personally, where they've just been taking on all these responsibilities and they don't have the luxury to just be a child. So in a sense, you know, it kind of like grows them up maybe quickly. They're a little bit more independent. You know, the world, they have been exposed to things in the world where maybe in some retrospect, they can't even be considered a child anymore because they've been exposed to all these things. And then it plays into the other side with, you know, what we're dealing with, white supremacy and in that realm, right? Where how they're, you know, look to be adultified per se. So it kind of like is just like a catch-22. So like, how can we as educators and parents, you know, make sure that we're stepping on that fine line to have like that conversation, like the world doesn't see you as I do, but that those children know how to navigate and still have that space to just be a child and not feel pressured or feel guilty for like, you know, just being themselves, being that teenager and being goofy and having fun and being so serious with those adult responsibilities, you know?
Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier. You used the word luxury twice. You said, these kids don't have the luxury to just be children. And you're right. It is a luxury. It is a privilege. And it speaks a lot to some of the institutional inequities that we have in our society. You know, if we're asking our kids to help us because we need help, because we can't afford to hire another employee, or I'm an adult and I'm a parent and I'm working 2 jobs and I need my oldest to look after the youngest because I can't afford childcare, I can't afford babysitting. Now what we're doing is we are looking at the impact of our society's inequalities and how they're affecting what's happening in the home. You know, you're going to have people who are lower income families depend on their kids to work a lot earlier, to go get a part-time job a lot earlier, to take care of their younger siblings a lot earlier because of the economic inequities that we have around us. You know, a lot of what we are doing in the home is a result of these inequalities that exist in society. What do you think about that?
I do. I think a lot of those outside factors also influence the parents, which in turn influence the children. So it's kind of like this perpetual cycle that's going on, right? And it's like we just have to, I guess, be innovative to how do we start to break those cycles.
Right.
Absolutely. Doc, we got a couple of moments left, and I'm just enjoying the conversation. And Corinna, you're bringing us some excellent points as we have this discussion, because I feel like, at least from us acknowledging that these things are happening, especially within our homes and within the community, then that maybe that it will spark somebody to say, you know what, let me try things a little bit better, a little bit different, because we have all been subjected to this, right? To this level of conditioning. And if we're talking about producing children of high quality, producing human beings of great caliber, then we have to, you know, and I know it's hard to be a parent, but we have to go back to within our own selves to see, okay, they say that old saying, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, what's rooting us as the tree? What's keeping us what's keeping us grounded as trees as we bear fruit, i.e. our children? Because our children are not going to be something that we aren't unless they've been exposed to something different. But if they haven't been exposed to something different, all they know is our way, the way we are in the household, the culture of the household. And you're talking about producing giants. You're talking about producing young men, young women who are going to take the world by storm. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's a scientific method on how to essentially raise Black boys and Black girls to be giants. When you look at all the heroes and sheroes of our history, I think Dr. Brown and Corinna, y'all both are historians, you study this stuff. You know that seeds were dropped early on when they were babies that they were going to be great. And so this is a very, I'm very passionate about this element of the conversation because I see it. We all see it. We talk about it. We laugh at it in some cases. Like, man, I saw this Black woman. She was yelling and cussing her children out, talking about this, you little this, you mother effer, and all of this stuff. But do you know that is putting a needle in the brain of a child's destiny? When you treat your children as an adult at a very young age, it stunts their growth. When you expect them to be this far along, when in reality they are this far along, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like a lot of this, and so they create a break in reality. It creates a schizophrenic behavior because they only know, hey, I only know this much of the world, but you want me to be in this part of the world. It's more harm than good. I want to get to people to read. I know we didn't talk too much about your book, so that means we want to have a second conversation now.
I like that.
But talk about Joker to King, that book, and how, and some of the things, because this is a not just a book, but this is a whole program on Black male development. So give us some insight about that. We got about a minute left for that.
Okay, well then I'll give you the 59-second story. But the bottom line is this book actually started as a challenge from my younger brother. There's a 19-year age difference. Many years ago when he was 21, he actually asked me to teach him how to be a man.
Wow.
And no one has ever been that explicit before. I've taught math for 8 years. I've taught English for 9 years. I've written curriculum. I've been a dean at the college, tutoring coordinator, you name it. He asked me, can you write curriculum with homework and everything? Can you actually teach someone step by step how to be a healthy man? And I took the challenge. You know, this was 2013, and the book was really written as a project for him until he had the insight to say, you know, you need to get some of my friends in the same room and tell them the same thing. And that's when I realized, okay, I got something here. Now, the book is called Joker the King, and the entire book is structured like a deck of cards, right? So there's the ace of spades, there's a lesson attached to each card, right? In order to be a healthy man, the idea is to manage 4 things. You need to be able to manage your relationships, and that's where the hearts are all the relationship lessons. You need to be able to manage your money. That's the diamonds. Those are all the resources lessons. You need to be able to manage your emotional mastery, being able to manage your mindset. Those are the spades. The lessons all about your inner work that you have to do. And then you have to be able to manage your way in the world. You know, how to buy a suit, how to travel, how to cook, how to be anti-sexist, the relationship between men and violence. Those are the clubs. And the idea is there are 52 cards in a deck. There are 52 weeks in a year. The idea is to move week by week, card by card, and you're building what healthy manhood looks like 1 week at a time, moving from that joker to being that king.
I will never look at a deck of cards the same.
Right?
Exactly right.
That is, I'm going to just say that is absolutely brilliant, brother.
Brilliant concept.
And I'm telling you, Coretta, I will never look at a deck of cards the same way. I'll be like you play, you play spades. Be like, what you got? See, I got 2 futures and 1 destiny.
Well, hey, it goes even further. Somebody said the same thing to me, so I created a deck of cards with the lessons on the cards. So while you're playing bid, whist, and spades, you're looking at the lessons.
Golly.
This is about to be a movie.
Dr. Brown.
This
Come
is
on,
about
man.
to be
This
a
Black
movie.
excellence too much on Friday.
And you know those teenagers love to play cards, so
there you go.
I'm not playing. Oh, come on, man. Come on. All right, hey, look, Doc, very quickly. I'm serious. We got to bring you back on, brother, because I
Yes,
love
for sure.
what you bring into the conversation. How can people pick up your copy of Joker the King?
It's available on Amazon, but you could also go to jokertheking.com. jokertheking.com. There's a podcast, website. There's even a link to ask for advice. There's an anonymous advice column. There's a course. We even have the YouTube video channel. So anything related to Joker the King, you type in the words Joker the King anywhere, you're gonna find us.
There it is, right there. Dr. Robert Dalen Brown, author, writer. He's been working in the space of young people, Black male development. He's been working in the education space. He works with one of our great fraternities. Brother, thank you so much, Doc. It has been an awesome pleasure and privilege for joining us for this conversation, a much needed conversation, but you got something very, very special, and I'm so happy that you shared it with us here on the Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hey, I appreciate it. Likewise, this show is special. So I appreciate being on this show.
I appreciate you, and thank you for being so good for the culture. There it is right there. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's shift gears and let's talk about a black man who is in some hot water, Jonathan Majors, talking about the controversy and the quick downfall of his career. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Folks, we're going to check in with Corinna Denise and Nira Muhammad. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. It's time for us to switch gears from talking about Joker the King to how one black man who seemed to be on top of the world, folks, he was coming out with big-time movies. He had a lot of projects lined up to grace the screens, and now his future is uncertain. I'm talking about Jonathan Majors, man, and I have to say, I've seen a lot of things, and Corinna, I want to bring you back in on this. Corinna, I have seen a lot of black men in the spotlight, right? Not just because they're, beautiful or anything, but for black men who bring a lot to the game, who show great promise. But this story right here, and all that is happening with our brother, I don't know if I've seen it happen so fast. Mm-hmm. Like I just found out about Jonathan Majors maybe a couple of months ago.
Really?
Like really, you know what I mean? He really got on the radar. He really kind of, what they say, blew up. And then it's like grand opening, grand closing. I've just never seen this. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this because there's so many different elements to the story. I want to have you. And, of course, I got Nira Muhammad, host of Queen Talks with Nira. She's joining us as well, talking about Jonathan Majors and really what has happened. It seems like this is a career that was on the rise, and then all of a sudden it just, boom, imploded. Nira, thank you for joining us this afternoon. You study a lot of things, Nira. Have you ever seen anything like this, though, with a high-profile actor of this caliber and of this magnitude, just kind of whose career just seemed to have gone from real in a matter of days?
No, not at all. I think the closest thing we've probably seen to it was probably like Ray Rice and his situation. But no, I can't believe it. I'm hoping that, I don't want to say he's guilty yet because I feel like everyone is deserves due process. But it's just messy and it's just sad and it's just really heartbreaking. And not necessarily because I think he's like the greatest actor, but I just think it's heartbreaking in general when you see anyone coming into their own, coming into their field and their craft and mastering their craft. And then you just see like this fallout. But again, if this is true, then the fallout is his own. You know what I mean? So it's one of those situations where we got to see what the facts are.
And I think, to your point, I think that's a great word to describe it: messy. It's just so messy. Like, there are so many like different versions of what happened. First and foremost, folks, this is the hard part about having these conversations in such a public space like this, is trying to make sense of the details, right? Trying to figure out like what really happened, because everybody has read all up about this situation in particular. And Corinna, when you think about, okay, it went from a domestic violence case to a situation where the accuser is saying, no, it didn't happen that way. Then you got text messages, and then the lawyer is saying that the victim, the alleged victim, recanted her statements, and then now it was reported by Variety, a major industry publication. This ain't no small time thing. Variety said, hey, there are a number of other witnesses and folks that have been abused by this man, and they're coming forward. Then you got the situation where his PR, his management, his PR team have all dropped him. Then I just saw near in Corinna where he had about 4 or 5 different movies that are lined up to hit theaters. Yeah. They're considering
that Marvel is on the line right now.
I'm thinking to myself, like, dang.
But you know what, Farajii? I want to just add in a couple of things real quickly, because I know like 2023 was supposed to be like a really big year for Jonathan Majors. Like, Creed 3 came out and Ant-Man. But I first came to know Jonathan Majors in Lovecraft Country.
Right.
And then like the Five Bloods. So he's had quite a bit of work on his resume prior to these bigger roles. So, and then he also did another movie that came out towards the end of 2022 called Devotion. I can't remember the name of the real life black
first black aviator, right?
Yeah, aviator or pilot, I think in the Air Force. He played, and to your point, it just seems like it was just a domino effect, right? And it's like, you just don't know what the hell to believe. Like, it's like all these stories, like first it happened, then it didn't happen, right? But I do feel like we need to let it play out and let all the evidence. I don't want to speak on anything too soon, right? But it's such an unfortunate situation, because I feel like he was really just coming into that prominence of being a really huge movie star. And it's just like, when did this incident happen? Like the end of March, and then like we're here.
It was like it felt like eons ago. But I think it was
the thing about it is and them saying that she recanted her statement. I read the statement. That was not a recant. That was to me, it sounded so much like women that I know that have been abused, who then they're like, no, it wasn't my fault. I was trying to take his phone from him. Like, regardless of whether or not you were trying to take his phone from him, you should not have had bruises on you. That's indisputable. That's an indisputable fact. In the police report, she had visible bruises on her. That's indisputable. So whether the nature was she was trying to grab his phone, I don't care. A woman had bruises on her. That's a fact that we all like. It's there. And so I think that when you look about
right. He's set to go to court. I think trial is
and she sounds like such an abused woman to me. I'm sorry. Like her whole statement was, I love you, baby. I'm gonna be right there supporting you. I'm so sorry that this is happening. I know women who have gone through that same exact thing, where they were getting abused, where the police showed up, where they did have bruises on them, where they did recant the story, where they took the guy back, and the abuse just continued, and it was just an ongoing cycle. So when you know women who personally know women who have gone through that, the first time I read that statement, I was like, okay, that sounded like an abused woman. Like, and I'm not saying that she is. I don't know if this was a one-time occurrence, but that statement, if you've ever known an abused woman, that statement was like poster child for an abused woman.
I will say this too, like, and I hope this doesn't sound like a petty side note, but thank goodness he doesn't have social media. And he said that, like, you can't find him on any social media. I can only imagine how much more of a living hell it would be right now if he was on Twitter or any of the social media platforms.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, he says damning things too, Farajii. What was the statement that you said he had made? The comment that he made that was so damning. It was like,
I mean, look. You know, before Creed came out, of course, he's been on that publicity tour. He did a sit down with NPR, and this was right after the Ebony cover dropped, of him in paint. And the sister asked him, Jonathan, what do you think of men who say that your expression of masculinity is questionable and soft and blah blah blah? And he was just, I mean, it came out, but then he kind of like he just kind of kept going. But he was just like, well, she said, well, what would you say to them if they could approach you? He was like, I wouldn't approach me on the street if I were them, if I were me either. I mean,
like, what does that even mean?
He said it like it was like, hey, I wouldn't want to catch me in the alley. But then he said, you know, my expression of masculinity is to show all the different facets. So it's like that, you know, some people took that and ran with it and said, oh man, this guy really. And he said himself, like, there's another, he did another interview where he said, quote, I'm not with the effery of the industry.
I appreciate that.
So like there is an authenticity that's there that he is not going to be one of these black men that is going to bow down. And I don't think we know a lot about the brother. And I'm not saying that in a way of like he's crazy or he's dangerous, but I just don't think we know too much about him. And he said it's been very strategic not to have his private life out there. Like a lot of us didn't know that his girlfriend was white. We probably didn't even know he had a girlfriend, right? But she's his ex-girlfriend at this point. But that's what the lawyer said. The lawyer said this is his ex. But it just goes to show, and he said that he grew up in Texas. He went from, I think he grew up in like a military family, you know what I'm saying? So he's been exposed to some things. That's why the Army called on him to do their ad. But he's been around his mother. His mother drove something, but he had some dark things that have happened in his life, which all of us have had, right? But when you're dealing with a black man who was put in this space, who became, if y'all think about this on a cultural level, he became like this poster child of what black masculinity looked like over these past few weeks.
Yeah.
Prior to this incident, you associated Jonathan Majors as this newfound black.
Uh-oh. We lost Farajii.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene. A white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, Brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need.
Right now.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause to long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, there we go. Right back in little technical difficulties. But as we were talking about Jonathan Major's career fallout, I've been checking in with Culture Crew members Nir Muhammad and Corinna Denise as we talked about this this fast breakdown of this black man, this black actor whose rise was meteoric in one sense and whose fall has been absolutely dramatic. Let me bring Nira and Corinna back into the conversation as we have in this. Yeah, I think that for him, he was like the symbol of black masculinity in 2023. You know what I'm saying? Like he was that guy, and now he's no longer that guy. And I think that speaks volumes. And somebody, I was reading a piece, Nira and Corinna, that somebody said, well, should Michael B. Jordan, how should Michael B. Jordan handle the situation? Because, of course, we know about the great bromance between him and Michael B. Jordan. And the fact that they've been promoting Creed for a year, so they've really created this bond, and then pictures of them and all of them hanging out at the Oscars and by all of this stuff. And the question was really asked, how should Michael B. Jordan handle this? He shouldn't handle this.
Well, I would imagine they've talked about it. I mean, they've said that they're friends, right? But I'm sure they're discussing that behind the scenes. What is there to handle? This kind of came out after Creed was already released and they did all the promotion. Thankfully.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure this was not talked about until it came out. Like, no man is gonna go up to his homeboy and be like, "Hey, bro, I just wanted to let you know, behind closed doors, I got a little anger issue. I like to hit women." Which you like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no one does that. I think Michael B. Jordan is gonna continue to do what he does, and I think that if you supported the film, like at the end of the day, Michael B. Jordan did direct this film, and it was written by Ryan Coogler, and there's a lot of other amazing people that were on this project. So no, I'm not going to cancel the project because it was not his project. He was on it, but it's not his project. And I just think that I'm just really sad about the entire situation. And I just feel like like Corinna said, we do have to wait for all the facts to come out because we still don't know all the facts. But at the same time, we're not going to be sitting in the comments talking about, oh, this is the Cosby effect and all these other BS. Like, I think we need to learn how to focus on the issue at hand and the situation at hand and stop throwing other names into the ring that have nothing to do with the situation. This is simply about this man and his actions. It's not about, oh, he was on the rise and they're just trying to come for a black man. Like, no, black men do stuff too. I can speak from my own experiences of my abuses have been from black men. So don't tell me that it's because they were on the, you know what I mean? Like, it's just really, really silly. We cannot negate what happens to women just because of a person's job.
I'm glad that you brought that up because that's the other component and the other dynamic of this whole discussion, which is, where some people say, here we go again. Right?
Here we go again with another man possibly, allegedly abusing women. Here we go again. Let's stick to that narrative. Because that's all it is.
I think too, what something you mentioned, Nira, like people throwing out the Cosby effect. I think people like to play the comparison game too much. And it just already convolutes the situation that we don't even know everything about. But yeah, I think it really makes me sad because it's just the timing, like everything's just so ironic, right? But we just won't know till till it plays out. And I feel like people jump ahead they just see a headline and they run with it. I've always been that logical thinker. Like, I need more information. Like, where'd you get that from? Now, what now? Now who?
But and Corinna, and to that point, I get it. I mean, you can get more information, but does that really change the fact that now moving forward, this guy is going to be labeled a domestic abuser? You see what I'm saying? Like you can. I feel like, and maybe the quick fallout of his career is just simply because it's just bad for business.
Yeah.
It's
just bad for business
too,
right
because
now.
His PR and his management just dropped him like that. It's just like everything is just unraveling so quickly.
And it makes you feel like, and you makes you think that maybe they know something that we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, if you believe in your client's innocence, 9 times out of 10, you're like, no, I'm riding with them. I know my client is innocent. We have the receipts. But it's like, if you have the receipts to prove that he's guilty, that's when you're like, yeah, we got to drop this client, because I'm pretty sure they're getting paid decent money to represent him. So for him to get dropped, that's kind of damning in its own right. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not a good look.
And that's the other part. Is it the fact of it does give the impression that, okay, if a PR company, major firm, if his management company, if these people are dropping him as a client, is it an indicator that, like you said, Nira, is it an indicator that he's actually guilty, or is it an indicator of them just running from the whole situation because that's the culture right now? That if you
It's not though. Look, Deshaun Watson still gets to freaking play football. Like, he got suspended for
but that's what 2 different industries though.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I know, but I'm just saying, like, they still have representation. You can go to CAA and get represented as a football player, basketball player, actor, book writer, all that. So I'm saying with these agencies, a lot of times they represent multiple, and management companies, they represent multiple facets of the industry. And that's what I'm pointing out, which a lot of people may not know, but one agency may represent different types of entertainers rather. So what I'm saying is, for them to drop him, I'm not saying that means he's guilty. I'm just saying it's not a good look, because 9 times out of 10, they have more information than what we have.
All right, Nation of Gamma Nation, you said, my thing is, why is it that he's automatically guilty in women's eyes? You already made up your mind. Any thoughts on that? Anyone, Corinna or Nira, y'all want to respond?
I mean, I'm not saying he's 100% guilty, but at the end of the day, there were bruises on her. So I guess that she put them there herself. I don't know. I'm not gonna, but I'm also a woman who's been abused. And I'm also a woman who understands how many other women have been abused. And the moment we speak out, it's, oh, but he was this kind of guy and he was that. And it's like, why the fuck are you defending the guy that abused me? So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give women the benefit of the doubt, because for centuries we've been ignored. For centuries we've been abused. And I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of men getting the fucking pass on the back just because they're a fucking celebrity. Like, you guys can just go ahead with that.
Corinna, that's a great point. Corinna, what's your take on that?
I mean, I'm ambivalent right now. Like, I don't know if he's guilty or not guilty. Like, I can't just go based on what I see right now. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff right now that we just don't know. So I'm kind of ambivalent. I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of in the space like, damn, it sucks that it's happening.
If he's found not guilty, like he goes to trial May the 8th, even if he's found not guilty, right, in the court of law, in the court of public opinion, how do you think that's going to play out?
I think it's going to be tarnished. But you know what? I feel like we still have to kind of bring in the point of, I do know, there are a lot of folks who are like, oh my gosh, it's like the takedown of another Black man. But we have seen other white counterparts who have been involved in things. Maybe it's not necessarily domestic abuse, but they do tend to bounce right back, and they are extended a level of grace in their career, right? So let's say, to your point, Farajii, if he's exonerated or whatever, how is he going to be looked at, moving forward? Is he going to receive that same kind of grace? Is his PR and his management team going to be like, oh, you were exonerated of the charges, okay, we'd like to represent you again? Like, I personally don't see that happening, but I can think of a few white counterparts who have done some things and they bounce right back, like Martha Stewart. She cooking it up with Snoop. They had their little show, whatever, I think on VH1.
That's a different thing.
I mean, Martha Stewart didn't abuse people. Like,
she went to jail.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Like, they always tend to like bounce back. I think Charlie Sheen though had some if I'm not mistaken.
I mean,
and his thing took a while though. Like he didn't bounce back. Like
no,
Charlie
he
Sheen went through like
this.
this.
He actually got HIV. He got HIV.
He had a whole lot of issues and it took a long time for him to. Yeah, like that was like he had a whole situation. But even like Johnny Depp didn't even like bounce right back. Like he was dropped from projects. He wasn't even able to be in like the final installment of Fantastic Beasts. So I feel like it's a lot of research and like, and I ain't gonna say research, but just kind of like knowing that industry to like know a little bit more if you're more of like a nerd on that side of things. But I don't care. Like that's the problem. We always comparing other people's situations. Like stop it. This is about Jonathan Majors. And I truly, truly do hope that he is innocent. I do want him to be innocent. I do want his career to bounce back if he is innocent. If that man is guilty, guess what, guys? He brought that on himself and it has nothing to do with him being Black. Like, let's take race out of this. This is a man who possibly, potentially, allegedly abused women. Not just one, because now we have multiple victims that have come forward. Not just one. Right. It was different when it was in the space of one. But now you got multiple women. So we just got to watch and see how it plays out.
But I think the point that Farajii didn't make a few seconds ago is that, let's say even if he is cleared of this and he's found to be innocent, like moving forward, is he going to just bounce right back? Because I've read in some places, like even Disney is like reconsidering right now. With he has to stand up in Marvel, right? Because
and he was in Loki. He's in the show Loki.
Yeah, I mean, so do you think that even if he's proven innocent, that he'll be able to just, I'll represent you again, like all that, whatever's on the table right now that could possibly be cut out, that won't be in danger anymore? Like, what's that going to look like for him? Because, will it be okay then? Is it reasonable that Brace does come up? Like, he was exonerated, but he's still being, tarnished.
It's going to take some time. I think that even if he does get exonerated, I don't think that any of those celebrities like bounce back like the next day. Like, I think it took some time for it to kind of like really die down. It wasn't really talked about as much. And then they might have snuck in like a smaller role. And it was like, okay, they kind of like step their way back up. I don't ever feel like it was like, oh, next day you're right back at it. I mean, let's be real. Black people did that crap with R. Kelly for a long time. When that video came out, we've been knowing about the stuff that R. Kelly did for how long? And Black people pretended like it wasn't happening. Even within our own families, we pretend in the Black community like stuff is not happening. And I am very, very sick of it. I'm sick of the culture of pretending. And I literally just had to take a training about child abuse for a job. And I can't even remember the exact number, but it was very astounding how much more Black women and children are abused than any other race in this country. Wow. More. And 9 times out of 10, it is by a relative or a family friend. And it is, we are like more than, like, I want to say at least 4 times more likely than any other race to be abused. And part of that issue is that we don't talk about this stuff. We pretend like it's not happening, or we make excuses for the perpetrator or the abuser. And I'm so sick of it. We got to do better. Hey, look, we have got to do better.
I agree. Vincent, you checked in and said, first of all, it's none of our business. Well, I do think it's our business because we don't talk about it. It's a part of our culture. How is it not our business when our dollars support these artists? Our dollars, we support these films. We support Disney Plus, which, he was on Loki. That's like where I kind of like got my first start from him, because I couldn't get into Lovecraft Country personally. But, you got these big opportunities, man, that a lot of people are auditioning for. Breaking out into this industry is not easy. And there are so many people that are auditioning and trying to get these same exact roles. So when you get that opportunity, don't squander it. If he's found guilty, whatever comes to him, he deserves, because he knew what his role was. He knew that he was in the limelight. He knew that he was becoming a celebrity. All these things, like, he knew. He's a grown man. Yeah. So, like, let's stop making these excuses as if he's like some 17-year-old boy who's like going through puberty and can't make up his mind or make decisions. This is a grown man. Yep. That's Corinna. It's crazy. Very quickly, I wanted to bring it up that Tiffany Haddish, she went on Twitter to try to quote unquote defend Jonathan Majors, but she deleted a tweet. But basically,
of all people,
speaking of abuse, she took to Twitter and uploaded a post about the video that showcases Jonathan Majors' accuser unhurt and clubbing while she also indicated that she's destroying this man's future. Well, people started dragging Tiffany Haddish and said, who are you to talk about somebody of being an abuser?
She didn't say he broke her ribs or broke her legs.
Child abuse situation.
You know what, Farajii? I saw that picture floating around too, but here's the thing. See, I think a lot of people, oh, she was in the club, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, well, when was the picture taken? Do you know if that was the same night?
Thank you.
You can't just conclusion that you see a picture, right?
That's a great point.
So this woman is supposed to be shut in the house now forever because she had an abusive situation. Who knows? Maybe her girlfriend's like, you've been in the house for too long. We got to get you out the house, girl. Come on, get cute. We're going out for a drink.
Enough to exonerate, because I mean, people move certain ways. Like, you're going through all kind of emotions, the allegedly stuff. So I don't think that.
They said there were bruises on her, not broken bones. So it's like she said she had a broken leg or a broken ankle or broken arm. Like, who doesn't move around with a bruise? I'm not. People are just reaching.
You had the God-given proof, Tiffany. Yeah, I wouldn't like, and you already
look, and all I was saying, Tiffany,
and that's why Beyonce blocked you, because you be putting out too much wrong information. Sis, remember that?
Look, Tiffany Haddish. I don't know why she spoke on an abuse situation. I'm telling you, that Ari Spears child abuse situation too much. Like Tiffany says, don't do it. Because
silence can be golden sometimes. Just
that's too much. You're barely getting out of this situation. So
I'm not a Tiffany Haddish fan, so
I get it. So we will have to see how this fallout will continue, Nira and Corinna. It's just so fast.
I pray for everyone involved that
it's really unfortunate. And if for those women who say that he abused, like, I'm with you on this one, Nira, that if he did it, he deserves whatever punishment. If he didn't do it, and they find out he didn't do it, that these were women that was just lying or whatever, they had a personal vendetta against them,
then he will not lose my support. I will still support.
I will still support. All right, Corinna Denise, I appreciate you, educator, college advisor. Thank you so much for checking in with us. Nira Muhammad, host of Queen Talks with Nira, and also an aspiring director of television. We appreciate you for coming on. There you go. There's Nira Muhammad on all her latest podcasts. Make sure y'all check her out on podcasts, where all podcasts are heard on various platforms. Thank you both for being so good for the culture today. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Farajii.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I hope you had a great, enjoyed this week. I'm going to try to get some rest this weekend, man. I am tired. Y'all see my shirt, Boycott Mondays? Lord, this is one of them weekends where I wish that we could boycott Mondays. But I hope and pray that you enjoy your weekend. Make sure y'all support us here at Black Star Network. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Share the information and content. And, of course, we ask for your financial support, because it means everything in keeping this platform going. So go to Black Star Network today and show your love. Also, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Black Star Network, and follow yours truly, Farajii Muhammad, on the real Farajii on Instagram, and at Farajii on Twitter. And I would love to connect with you. And I got a couple extra spaces on Facebook, so find me there as well. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll reconnect on Monday for another exciting edition of The Culture, right here, exclusively here, only here, the Black Star Network. Have a great weekend, folks. Talk to you soon. Peace.